Hi, my name is Patrick Ta. I was born in San Diego, California. Beauty that brings you out is so important for me because beauty has allowed me to be myself. It's allowed me to find my voice.
I have a question for brands. How would you feel if someone stole from you? If someone took your hard-earned time and work, blood, sweat, and tears, and they stole from you?
Patrick Ta, a high school dropout turned beauty mogul. I'm so excited today to share this brand story. It is a fascinating one because while you may know Patrick for his beauty brand and or his artistry, there's a lot behind the scenes that I don't think people are aware of. For example, his beauty brand at Sephora was not his first business. It was his first successful business, but it was not his first business. It's also fascinating to consider what this video is going to look like today through a 2025 lens and how different it might have looked 1 to 2 years ago, because the public perception of the brand has really done a 180. Patrick Ta Beauty has quickly gone from the internet's darling to a rather controversial brand for a lot of different reasons that I'm excited to talk about today. So let's jump in. I'll be doing a mostly full face of Patrick Ta, though not entirely, but this is the foundation. I have mine in the shade 5 Golden Neutral. But we'll see how it looks today. It's normally just way too glowy in my opinion, but I went really light with my base, so we'll see how it goes. But let's get started with Patrick the person. He's first generation Vietnamese American, and he was born in San Diego, California to a pretty big family. Now, he only had one sibling. He has a sister, but he has 40 cousins. And I read and listened to a lot of interviews from Patrick leading up to this video. And one thing that he repeated throughout all of them was feeling like a bit of an outcast in his early years, both at school and in his family. He talked a lot about being bullied throughout his life for being overweight, for being gay. He also talked about feeling insecure being Asian in a predominantly white area when he was growing up, but he also felt like an outcast even in his own family. He told Pop Sugar, "I became the black sheep of the family because my sister was a straight A student, all my cousins were straight A students, I wasn't academically gifted." And between all of that, it actually led to him dropping out of high school his junior year. He moved from California to Scottsdale, Arizona, and he actually convinced his parents that he was moving out there for culinary school, but that was not the real story. He was wanting to meet up and become friends with some people that he had met on MySpace. Yeah, what a throwback, MySpace. And when he was in Scottsdale, he ended up working at a sushi restaurant for 2 years, and he convinced his family to let him open up a tanning and nail salon in Arizona. At the time, his family already had quite a few salons in California, so now Patrick, 18 at the time, was running this salon. He was saying in interviews that he was the boss of employees that were much older than he was. And this salon was his first business, pre the beauty brand that we know of today as Patrick Ta Beauty. But as you can imagine, a salon with an 18-year-old running it did not last very long.
I was thrown into the environment of being the boss when I was like 18 years old to my employees that were a lot older than me. I did not know how to manage people as an 18-year-old, just running around telling people what to do and not even knowing myself, having to shut down year 3. And it was such like a big like moment in I thought my life was over. I came into work one day and the doors were chained locked from our landlord because we couldn't pay our rent.
But throughout all of this, Patrick has always had an interest in beauty, and it was actually a roommate that helped him get a job at a Mac counter. He didn't work there long, but he started doing makeup on clients, he started building up his portfolio, and he was doing a lot of bridal makeup. And he slowly started to get bigger and bigger clients and bigger jobs. I was actually listening to an interview that he did with Patrick Star on Patrick Star's podcast, and he shared this story that I probably would not have shared if I was Patrick Ta. I don't think this painted him in a very good light, but he talked about one of his big breaks in the beginning was when he was asked to do the makeup for a very famous celebrity. And at the time, he actually had a gig the next day to do a bride's makeup. And he talked about feeling a bit unsure about that decision because he knew this was a really good opportunity for his career to work with this celebrity. but it's also obviously not ideal to cancel on a bride the day before their wedding. But that is what he did. Yes, he was supposed to fly out to the Dominican Republic the next day to do someone's makeup for their wedding, and he canceled on the bride the day before. I can't even imagine if that was my wedding and my makeup artist canceled the day before. I'm flying my makeup artist out and they canceled that last minute. Again, I couldn't believe he talked about that on the podcast because I think it paints him in a very unprofessional light. But he talked about that being one of his big breaks because that client was the one and only Gigi Hadid. Gigi in particular was one of the most influential celebrities in Patrick Ta's career. Both Gigi Hadid and Shay Mitchell were two of his big breaks that really kicked off his career and helped him establish a lot more connections in the industry. Returning to the idea that we talked about earlier of Patrick Ta kind of feeling like an outcast, never feeling like the in group, he talked in quite a few interviews about never feeling like one of the popular kids growing up.
And I definitely was not the popular kid at school. I think just because never being a part of like the popular group, I wanted that for my life. I think like when you don't have something, you want it even more. So
right.
I think that has honestly like shaped my whole entire career.
And he talked about how this idea of never feeling popular was a big driver in his career and a lot of the ambitions that he's had. And so at this time, he's starting to work with so many A-list celebrities. It's like Patrick, is now part of the in-group that he was always craving being a part of. In all the interviews that I watched for this video, Patrick spoke really highly about all the female connections that he's had in his life. He talked about being younger and knowing that he was gay but not being out yet, and how having friendships with women felt like a safe space for him to be himself. And he also talked about his love of makeup growing because of this. He loved that he could do someone's face and make them feel as confident as they made him feel. He also talked a lot about this being reflected in the names of his products, like the bronzer I'm applying right now is She's Statuesque, and that's a naming pattern he repeats a lot in his shade names. A lot of them are called She's Blank, so like she's expensive, she's this, she's that. That was all influenced by his female connections and friendships throughout his life. And 2019 was when he started his beauty brand, Patrick Ta Beauty. But to fully understand the Patrick Ta origin story, as well as the origin story of most beauty brands that popped up around that time, we need to talk about beauty brand incubators. So an incubator, what is it? Kind of an all-in-one company that can help expedite the process of creating a beauty brand. You know, they've got tons of industry connections. They can help with capital, research and development. They've got lab connections. They're there to help with branding, supply chain, like they can do it all. So instead of having to do all those things separately, you know, if you're starting a brand, instead of having to build your own team, there's one that's already built in that specializes in this, that already has all those connections and that experience, which, as you can imagine, makes things a lot more seamless and fast, which is a big contributor to why we've seen so many beauty brands explode in the last 5 to 10 years, ever since this model in the beauty industry has really started picking up steam. It's not brand new. I mean, this has been around for a while, but they've definitely increased in volume in the last 5 to 10 years. We also have beauty brand accelerators, a similar model, but they're not necessarily starting the brand themselves. They're pumping resources into them to grow the brand, but they're all kind of falling under this umbrella. And most of today's biggest beauty brands were started under this model. You know, Fenty, ColourPop, pretty much everything. Business of Fashion writes, independent brands became beauty's most talked about, holding their own against legacy labels and at times going on to be acquired for 9 or even 10-figure sums. That momentum helped drive excitement amongst investors and entrepreneurs, making building beauty brands a more appealing concept than ever. So now we have this influx of companies whose purpose is to create more companies, or at least to grow existing companies. And what will oftentimes happen is that they will latch on to a notable figure, a celebrity, an influencer, a makeup artist, and use this person as the face of the brand. Business of Fashion also writes, sometimes a celebrity's desire to launch something is made known, or an incubator approaches an agent to pitch ideas for clients. And that's really my suspicion when it comes to so many of these brands. I would guess that more often than not, the incubator is approaching them compared to the other way around. And this can also be a bit exploitative for that person that is the face of the brand, because they don't always have as much involvement as as we as consumers might believe that they do. A really great example of this is Andrew Fitzsimmons. You may know him as a celebrity hairstylist. He's very well known for doing Khloe Kardashian's hair, and he actually started his own beauty brand through Mesa, which is like one of the OG incubators. Mesa is huge. They started Drew Barrymore's brand Flower Beauty, just for some context here. And Andrew Fitzsimmons started his brand through Mesa until he recently bought it back, okay? You know, former incubated brand owners have described it as being creatively unfulfilling. Andrew specifically said, beauty brand incubators are like old school record labels where they will see people who already have an established career, they just market them. A record label has a lot of artists. They're splitting their resources. When an artist is independent, they can actually do their own thing. So all that to say, the process is generally pretty opaque. We don't fully know what's going on behind the scenes and or how much involvement these people do or do not have in these brands and how much impact they have in the decisions that the brands are making. And when it comes to the beauty brand Patrick Ta, yes, it's named after him. Publicly, he appears to be pretty involved, but we really don't know. We can genuinely only speculate how much involvement these people have. Even the Rode video that I did last month, their brand wasn't started by a beauty brand incubator, but they did have like a ton of VC funding. But anyways, even that, like Hailey is considered the creative director, but other people are running the business, you know? I'm taking a risk here applying this powder on top. This is the new Kosas powder. I'm actually really liking it, but the Patrick Ta foundation is just so dewy that setting it with a heavy powder like this sometimes doesn't. Not heavy, this is not heavy, to be clear actually, but any powder on this doesn't always want to work. But let's cross our fingers. But now to the incubator that started Patrick Ta Beauty. So SOS Beauty was founded in 2017, and they have had their hand in some of the biggest beauty brands today, including Merit, Way, Fable and Mane, Shani Darden, Nature Lab Tokyo, and more. But of course, this story today, Patrick Ta. It was started by Charlene Valador and Destin Cash. So who are they? Well, Destin at age 18 started an event company. And then he started working with the hair care brand Alterna, which was where he got his start in beauty. He wore a lot of hats at the company, worked in a lot of different positions. So he kind of got to try out a lot of different things. He has said that was how he learned to run a beauty business because he wore so many hats at that job. And he thought to himself, if this is hard for me to do with all my experience and my network, it must be impossible for everyone else. So then he got into consulting, started bringing on more and more clients. His consulting business blew up. You can see where this is going, where ultimately he starts an incubator. But let's talk about his partner, Charlene. She has talked about always loving beauty, having an interest in it, and she went to school for biochem and started immediately working in beauty after graduating, kind of building up some experience there before she ultimately started working for some big beauty brands like Hourglass. Yes, she was the head of product development at Hourglass for quite a few years before she ultimately moved over to M Cosmetics before eventually starting SOS Beauty with Dustin. Okay, so now you're all caught up. So as I said, the brand was started in 2019, and I want you to think about makeup trends at the time. They were glowy, they were dewy, so it makes sense that SOS wanted to start this brand with Patrick Ta, who was known for that style of makeup. This is what he's doing on red carpets. He has a lot of notable celebrity clients. This was a match made in heaven for the type of makeup that was popular at the moment, and having a basically like celebrity spokesperson that could head that brand.
Now, have you ever wondered how Olivia Munn, Shay Mitchell, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, the Hadid sisters get their incredible glow? Well, I know the secret, and his name is Patrick Ta. Patrick Ta Beauty's debut collection, Major Glow. The king of glow has now debuted Major Glow.
And we definitely saw this in a lot of the early launches from Patrick Ta. Very glow focused, like this hyper dewy glowy look. And even still today, the more recent launches, like the foundation that I was talking about, I don't particularly like it because it's hyper glowy, but it definitely fits back into that original Patrick Ta imagery that everyone thinks of when they think of his makeup looks. They're very glowy, they're glossy, dewy. That's his specialty. And the brand heavily relied on that glow that Patrick Ta is known for. As well as his connection to Gigi Hadid. All of the early marketing for the brand was like Gigi Hadid's makeup artist. Gigi Hadid's makeup artist started a brand. It was all about Gigi. And you can also see how much inspiration he has taken from other favorite products. The signature packaging that the brand is known for is pretty much identical to packaging from Tom Ford that Patrick has talked about using and loving prior to starting his brand. And so many of the early launches from the brand were incredibly well received. It was like they could not launch a bad product. People seem to love everything coming from Patrick Ta, but again, the products really matched the style of makeup that was popular at the time. But in those early days, which feels a little strange to think about because the brand's only 6 years old, but in those early days, it was like they could do no wrong. They had some of the top selling products at Sephora. They were winning Allure Best of Beauty Awards. The brand was incredibly well loved. But over the last 2 years, and especially in the second half of 2024, the public started to become a bit disillusioned with Patrick Ta Beauty. So let's start with the mold. You might be familiar with this. A lot of consumers started sharing that their palettes that they purchased from Patrick Ta for $70 were growing mold.
We need to talk about this. Fuzzy white stuff in the eyeshadow.
Is that mold? That's growing mold in my freaking $70 palette. It's a little over a year. I mean, seriously?
Every review on Sephora is like, my palette has mold in it. I don't own that palette, so I can't speak to that. However, the brand denies this, and I'm gonna read you what it says on their website. We assure all customers that there has been 0 traces of mold revealed in testing of our eyeshadow palettes. We take customer claims very seriously and conducted a thorough investigation, and all results confirm there is no mold in the product. They say our Major Dimension 2 Rose eyeshadow palette contains a unique variety of eyeshadow formulations, some of which contain high percentages of oils and waxes which are susceptible to temperature fluctuations. A temperature fluctuation such as extreme cold produces a visual blooming of the waxes in the formula. We've performed extensive testing to confirm that this blooming in the formula is not mold or bacteria of any form, simply a formation due to the temperature, and the product is safe to continue to use for the eye area. That's what they say. Mold or not, I don't want my product blooming. This feels like a quality control issue and something that needs to be reformulated regardless of safety. It's just kind of gross. Now, beyond the mold allegations, consumers started becoming shocked by Patrick Ta prices, specifically in their new launches in 2024. And the conversation really kicked off with this foundation that they launched for $58, which is considerably higher. And that's 58 USD. That's not talking like Canadian. This is 58 USD, considerably higher than many of its high-end counterparts that range between $36 to $48 at Sephora. You know, it's priced higher than a lot of luxury brands at Sephora like Dior, Charlotte Tilbury. People called the brand greedy, out of touch. People were pretty shocked by the price, but it didn't get nearly as much attention as the eyeshadow duos that the brand launched later that year for $42 USD, which is somehow $4 more than the blush duos that they already sold. This caused outrage. Like, if you remember, you could not escape this. This was like the drama of the week, was the price of this eyeshadow duo. I remember when it was first announced on Trendmood, and we know Trendmood will kind of like leak things. It's not always the correct information. So Trendmood had shared the price before the brand did, and I remember thinking, there's no way, that's a mistake. She got that wrong. They're gonna say it's actually like $32. And then the product launched and it really was $42. And people were upset about this, especially because there were some quality concerns with that mold situation, but also the eyeshadows were falling out of the pans from this duo. Nothing about it was giving $42 quality. There was a ton of discourse about this, which ultimately led to Patrick posting a TikTok video defending the price of his products. And something you will notice here is that Patrick kind of does this and really escalates situations instead of resolving them. He kind of has a pattern of this. I don't know if he doesn't have a PR team. I would assume that he has to, and I don't know if he's just not running these things by them before he's posting these, but so often he will post a really quick response that ultimately just makes things worse.
Let's have a little conversation about my eyeshadow duos. There has been a lot of conversation around my eyeshadow duos and the pricing, so I wanted to get on here and just talk about the formula. They're not a pressed formula, these are not a cream, these are what you call a slurry. I wanted to pull out some other products that are out there on the market right now just to show you guys the pricing. So this is a fan favorite right now. This is $24 for 1.7 grams of product, but with mine you are getting 4 grams of 100% pearl. For a single eyeshadow you are getting 1.4 grams. This MAC eyeshadow right here, this is $25. This is a matte eyeshadow. Pearl definitely costs a lot more. This one right here, this is $26, and this one right here, this one is $30. I do think that this is special, and I do think that you will love it, and if you are able to give it a chance.
Coming on camera with the paper, breaking down the math, it just didn't read professional. It didn't seem like a good look for the face of a brand. Certainly not an advisable course of action from him. I don't know why he did that. Like, don't get me wrong. I think if someone else would have posted that video, another creator saying, you know, look at all these other eyeshadows, it might have been more impactful, but coming from Patrick, the brand owner, I don't think it was a good look. So at this point, the public is a bit disillusioned with the brand. And in December 2024, there was a viral video from creator Ivana Sunshine breaking the compacts of her Patrick Ta products while explaining that the brand had never paid her for her work.
I'm sick of seeing companies profit off of the black dollar and they're not paying black creators. What do you suppose I do? I went the nice way. I wasn't the mad black woman when I emailed or when I DM'd you. So what do you suppose I do? I have a question for brands. How would you feel if someone stole from you? If someone took your hard-earned time and work, blood, sweat, and tears, and they stole from you? How would you feel if someone stole from your mother? Am I supposed to just let it ride? Just let it go? I thought about that. I was like, you know, just let it go. But then you see people, especially black people, riding for the company. And that doesn't make me feel very well. Because I just wonder if those black creators that are supporting you so heavily knew that you were out here not paying black creators, how would they feel? I don't think they'd be okay with that. I'm surely not. And who knows? You may see this video and still not give a shit. But my work here is done. Pay black creators.
And so again, remember when I said Patrick tends to make things worse? He posted a video to his TikTok.
I need to address the situation that has happened with Ivana and how my team and I have been handling it the last couple of days. Ivana, I am truly so sorry that this has escalated to this point, and I'm so sorry that I didn't see your message. I want to get you compensated as soon as possible, today if possible, if you are willing to answer me. I want you to know that if I had known this, I would have never let this happen. This was my team's mistake, but my name is on this brand. I am the one that you guys see, so I take full responsibility and accountability.
And then he quickly deleted that video and then reposted the same thing with him now crying, because round one was pretty monotone. He deleted it and reposted a version where he was more emotional. Not a good look. And this started sparking conversation about Patrick Ta not paying black and brown creators that he was working with. And then again, pretty recently, TikTok creator Jules LeBron talked about feeling exploited by Patrick Ta at the, again, going back to this foundation, at the launch of this foundation last year. So the product launch for this took place in the height of the very demure online sensation. If you remember this last year, that word was everywhere. It actually ended up being the word of the year for 2024. Very demure was like a viral sensation last year. And it gained popularity because of TikToker Jules LeBron. So at the New York launch party for this product, Patrick asked Jules to fly in the day of. And I actually was at this event, so I can kind of speak from that experience. It was my only, and maybe after this video, my last Patrick Ta event. But while we were there in the middle of the event, Jules walks in, Patrick explains that he asked her to come that day, like very last minute, like, hey, can you fly out to New York for this event? We want you to be here. And then Patrick filmed some TikToks with Jules.
I went to go to New York to do foundation event. Gets called out for not paying brown and black creators.
Oh, no.
So then everyone's like asking me like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Because I went to this foundation event during the very demure launch. And so then I thought about it. At the height of the most viral sensation of TikTok in 2024, you got me to fly to New York for free, unpaid, to essentially promote your foundation. I didn't feel this way until I looked back at the simple fact that like, he was like, him and his manager were like, oh, we're going to just make some TikToks. We're just going to make some TikToks. And so then I'm excited because I was like, one of my idols.
Right.
Gagged. Love him. So I'm like, of course I'm going to make some TikToks with you. You know what I mean? He was making TikToks with all the divas, but he was paying the other divas.
Right.
I had found out later. Everyone's like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Didn't want to like stir the pot. Because like, what am I going to say? Like, didn't pay like the very demure girl who's a plus size like Afro-Latina. Like,
right.
Like, that's going to be like ending like stab in the wound. You know what I mean? So I was like, let me just and let that play out. So, but then the video talking about some, oh, if you're a creator who worked for us, like, and you felt like you should have been paid, like, just like let us know and we'll pay you. So then I left a little Kamiana, and I was like, hey, just thought it was kind of weird. I didn't get paid for you guys to make me essentially promote your foundation and get you 12 million views on it.
Wow.
Someone tagged him, was like, oh my God, give Jules her first brand deal.
Nah.
When he did it, and then was like, you know, we love helping the divas.
No way.
A lot of bad looks for the Patrick Ta brand kind of back to back there. After, again, being the internet's darling for quite a few years, the public perception has shifted a bit. Which leaves me wondering, what does the future look like for Patrick Ta Beauty? I do question if the brand is trying to reposition into more of a luxury brand. That would appear to be the case with the price points alone, but I think it would be quite a hurdle to make that transition with their more recent reputation of launching subpar products, you know, with the mold allegations, eyeshadows falling out of pans, overall very negative reviews of products like the highlights that launched last year as well. I think it would be quite a hurdle for them to align themselves with luxury at this point. I also wonder how shifting makeup trends will affect the brand, especially considering blush seems to be coming down a little bit, and the brand has heavily relied on their blushes. They say that sales grew 200 to 300% year over year in 2024 for their blush duo alone. I wonder what they could come out next that would have that same level of impact. But not only that, the experiences that creators have had with Patrick Ta, specifically black and brown creators not being paid, the Jules example, the Ivana Sunshine example, has certainly left a bad taste in people's mouths considering Patrick Ta. And considering all of this, I will be really curious to see what the journey for the brand looks like long term. But I hope you enjoyed this deep dive. I will leave my more recent ones linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will go ahead and see you in my next video. Bye.